Hi, Dr. Peterson. I would just like to ask you to please talk about what Jung called a psychic death, also known as an ego death.
Okay, say that again.
Would you please talk about what Jung referred to as a psychic death, also called an ego death?
That's what happens when someone who loves you betrays you. Right? So imagine that the world is complicated beyond comprehension, right? And you only see a very little bit of it. And the way you structure your understanding is you make assumptions about things, and they're simplifying assumptions. So if you trust someone, you reduce their complexity massively, right? Because, like, let's say we were married, then there's a whole bunch of ways that you're going to act that are going to be simpler. Okay, so then I can tolerate being around you in some sense because you're not everything at once. Now, the simplifying structures are hierarchically assembled, and some of them are far more important than others. Trust is one of them, especially trust in loved ones, family members, which is why betrayal by a family member is really catastrophic, because it destabilizes your past, right? All the memories you have. It destabilizes your present. It destabilizes your future. It shakes your faith in human beings, including yourself. And everything collapses. And that's an ego death. And so, now underneath the ego, as far as Jung was concerned, was another structure that he called the self. And the self is the thing that remains constant across ego deaths. But it's deeper and less personal. It's archetypal. And it's the thing that the ego collapses into when it collapses, and then it rebuilds the ego. Something like that across time. But that's what an ego death is. Now, there's variants of that, because you can have a voluntary or an involuntary ego death. And a voluntary ego death is when you learn a bunch and you're willing to let go. So that would be your own immolation. It's like you're a phoenix and you're lighting yourself on fire. That's a much better idea, even though it can still be really harsh. The involuntary ego deaths, they're really hard on people. People will do almost anything to stop that from happening, which is partly why they fight to maintain their group-fostered axiomatic simplifications. It's not surprising, because it's you lose like that ego death is a journey into the underworld, or it's a collapse into chaos. And that's not so bad if you do it purposefully. But in the Pinocchio story, for example, that's exemplified by Pinocchio going down to the depths to rescue his father from the whale. Now, he does that voluntarily, but it damn near kills him, right? I mean, first of all, he hardly gets out of the whale. Second, he actually drowns and dies, but he comes back to life. So even if you do it voluntarily, it's still, well, it's just better than doing it involuntarily, which is the other alternative. So that's what it is. You bet.